If you watch until the end of this video, I'm going to break down my exact step-by-step process for vetting out the wrong people and being able to bring A players inside of your organization. I've consistently been able to hire real estate acquisitions managers that have been able to bring in $100, $150, up to $200,000 per month, and I've helped my students do the same thing. Now, one of the most common things that I see wholesalers get stuck with is they are not very good at sales themselves. And as much as they, want to go get the training, they just hate talking to people. And so what do? They go hire other people to come into their organization. The first problem with that is if you do not learn the sales skills yourself, you're probably not going to be able to get your business to a point where you can really get the lead flow into hiring a good rep. Unless you come from, some other business or some other place where you have money to spend on marketing, it's going to be really tough to get to that point. However, even when people do get to that point, typically what I see is they'll just hire anybody with a pulse. Someone has a pulse, they're going to hire them, and they're going to be like, well, this guy's actually willing to work for me, or this girl's willing to work for me. Heck yeah, I'll hire them. And that's what they consider a mutually beneficial relationship, is they are willing to work for the company and the company's willing to pay them if they close deals. And what happens is they just continue in this endless cycle. They hire somebody, they end up not really, bringing any revenue enough to get them profitable. And then they end up having to let them go, or the rep quits because they aren't making enough money. And then they start the cycle over and over and over again. And so there's really two parts. One's hiring and then the other one's maintaining. But we're going to go over the hiring process, because without hiring, you'll never be able to maintain. And so step one, the first thing I want to do is when I am going through and I'm screening my candidates, I like to get my candidates from, WiseHire is typically my favorite place to get candidates from, because it syndicates to a bunch of other platforms, Indeed, Monster, all of those other ones. I get a lot of candidates from WiseHire. And so the first thing I want to do right when they come in is I want to do something called a screening call. So I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. So in the screener call, it's really simple. Think about how sellers talk to you when you first call them. Their resistance is up. Their walls are up. And if you call a potential candidate and you're like, hey, Sally, how are you doing? Just saw that you filled out the application. Thanks for applying. So excited to talk to you. Is that how sellers talk to you when they fill out a form on your website? Are they like, hey, John, thanks for calling me back. So excited to talk to you about selling my property. No, they don't do that. They're resistance. And so this should be a quick 5-minute call. You should have your wall up and you are constantly putting pressure on them and challenging them to see if they will break through your wall. If they break through your wall, they'll be able to do that with sellers as well. So typically I open up this call and I just say, hey, Bob, it's John over at ABC Home Buyers. Saw that you filled out an application. I've only got 3 or 4 minutes. I've got a ton of people that applied, but I'm just giving you a quick call to see if this makes sense to even hop on an interview. You got a couple minutes? Yeah, I got a couple minutes. All right, cool. What makes you feel like you'd be a good fit for the role? And I'll just go straight into a hard question. What an inexperienced closer will do is they will just immediately start qualifying themselves. So they're gonna be like, thanks for calling me. They're just going to get choked up immediately. However, what a good closer will do is they'll be able to disarm you. And the way that they'll typically do that is they'll be like, okay, I would need to know a little bit more about the position, kind of what it entails to make sure what I do would actually, help you guys scale and maybe what you guys are trying to accomplish, right? Just like a salesperson would. And then they'll flip it and turn it back onto you and start asking you questions. This shows that they have a really high status frame, whereas a low status frame, they'll get choked up. They'll start, stuttering over their words the second you start putting any sort of pressure. You're going to get a really good sense of how they are going to sound on the phone when you put pressure on them. If they sound cool, calm, collective, then they're going to sound like that on the phone. If they sound like they are choking up, they're going to sound like that on the phone, right? So this will give you a really good understanding. Now, the next thing I do is I say, okay, so walk me through what's your current role right now? What are you doing? And as they do that, I'll kind of cut them off. I'm very to the point. I might question them if they say something like, oh yeah, so I do it that way. I say, oh, why do you do it that way? And then they're going to say, well, we do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. And does that work for you? I'll just cut them off. I'm going to be really quick. And I am trying to get their resistance up. And I'm trying to see if they can lower my resistance. If they can do that for me, then I know they will be able to do it for sellers as well. The next thing I'm looking for is how many reps are in their organization and where do they rank? And was that a one-time thing or is that consistently? So I'll ask them, okay, how many sales reps are on your team? Oh, I've got 10. All right. And last month, how did you perform on the board? Were you the top guy? Were you the top 3? Were you the top 5? Where were you at? If they weren't in the top 10%, I probably won't even book them onto my next call. I want to make sure that like they're the top 10% inside of their company. And then I'll ask them how consistent that is, right? So overall, like for the year, were you in the top 10%? How do I know that? Did you get any sort of awards? Did you make President's Club? Do you have any sort of proof to back that up? And I'll tell you a good example. I had a rep reach out to me that came from this huge sales organization, And he sent me a screenshot of their leaderboard for the year. And he was top 2. He's like, look, this is it. Like the good reps, they show proof because they have proof. And before I got into wholesaling, I was in the mortgage business. Every single month, leaderboard comes out. Where are you, right? How many loans did you close? How many applications? All of those things, how many credit pulls? It showed that on a leaderboard every single month. So any legitimate organization has that. If they say they don't, then they're probably lying or they're working for their friend or something like that. So the outcome for this call, I'm looking to see if they crack under pressure, how well they respond to my questions, and then are they a top performer? If they are a top performer, then I am going to invite them into the second call. Now, the second call is going to be an initial interview. This is going to be a legitimate interview where we sit down and talk about if they are a good fit for the company. I don't want to just go straight to an initial interview. I'm going to waste a ton of time. I'll give you guys an example. One time someone applied and based on their resume, they looked like they would be a good fit. So I called them, put a little pressure on them. I told them like, look, this job is going to be really difficult. It's going to require you to make, 50 to 80 outbound dials per day. And immediately he was like, whoa, I'm not doing any of that. Like I will take booked calls on my calendar and that's it. I'm not going to be doing any sort of outbound calls. Well, thank God I did a 5-minute screener call when I had a couple of minutes instead of blocking off an hour of my time to interview this guy to find out that same thing. And so in my screener call, I am going to tell him like, hey, the job's difficult. Why do you feel like you would be a good fit? Why do you feel like you would make it? It's one of the hardest industries out there. Like you are literally going to be convincing a seller to sell their home below market value. Like, why do you think they do that? If I can't ask them questions like that and eliminate the wrong people, it's going to take me forever to hire a good rep. In my initial interview, this is only the people that make it through. Now I'm blocking off an hour. The first thing I want to find out is, are they a top performer at their current company? The biggest indicator of success is prior success. If they had prior success at their past company, they at least have the tools to be able to find success. They have the mindset to be able to find success in our organization as well. And so I want to make sure, like, did they hit President's Club? Are they a top rep consistently? President's Club is a typical award that they give out for like the top, 10% inside of a company. The next thing I want to look at, I'm going to ask them a simple question. Walk me through every job you've had from the very first job all the way to what you do now. And if I see a lot of lateral movement, meaning they were account executive, then they were account executive for another company, then account executive for another company, I knew they weren't very good because why are they just moving from sales role to sales role to sales role? And so a good rep, you are going to see non-lateral movement, meaning they will start out as an SDR and then they're going to move to an account executive. An SDR is just a fancy word for like an appointment setter. Then they're going to move to an account executive. Then they're going to move to a sales manager or a team lead, then a sales manager, then, a market manager. Like they're going to continue to move up inside of the organization. They're going to continue to get promoted. And so that's what I'm looking for when I walk them through their past jobs or when they walk me through their past jobs. I'm looking for any signs that they are just hopping from job to job to job. I also want to make sure that every job that they're at, I mean, there can be like a few exceptions where they start a company, they work for like a few months, or like, this is not what I signed up for. But for the most part, I want to see job history over 2 years. I want to see that they can actually stick through to something. If they're job hopping every year or so, that's not a good sign for me. And they can't actually build something. They're not going to stick around in your organization as well. Then I look for culture fit. And so when I'm looking for culture fit, it's really easy for me to find out. I just ask them what they don't like about their other companies or why they didn't work out with the other companies. And I can start to identify if they do not fit into my culture. And so one of my core values is extreme ownership. And I had this one rep who I was interviewing, and he just kept blaming everyone else for why he didn't find success there. Oh, well, they just kept hiring a different sales manager and I never really got the training and I never got this, I never got that. And I asked him, like, was anybody else successful at that company? He's like, yeah. Okay, well, what was the difference between them and you? Oh, well, this one guy, he just got fed the best leads. It was all other people were responsible for his failures. And so I know that that's not a culture fit right off the get. Also, we have a core value that is constant dedication to growth. And so if I can just sense that they are looking at this as a 9 to 5 and they don't really have any goals outside of working inside of the 9 to 5 job, they want to just go back and watch Netflix, I know they're probably not going to fit into my organization. And so you can ask specific questions to figure out if they're going to be a good culture fit for your core values in your organization as well. The next thing I'm going to ask them is, walk me through your sales process. Like, what does that look like for you? If they stutter on that and they don't have an actual process, then I know they're just going to be winging it. And they're not typically going to be receptive for any sort of training. And so when I ask them, walk me through your sales process, I really want to hear that they've gone through some other type of training, some specific type of training where they've learned a process and they are trying to implement that. If they do that, they typically get consistent results and they know that a process works. I don't want to be the one that teaches them, oh, this is a process and a sales process should work because of X, Y, and Z. Like, I need them to know that a sales process works. I don't want to be, bringing on somebody that doesn't know that they should be following a sales process. Then I check for work ethic. I want to know, are they willing to put in the effort that's required to succeed? And I might give them an example. Hey, we had a rep who made $40,000 last month and he was working like weekends. He was working after hours and he's really putting in the work. I mean, would you be able to do that if you were able to hit that level of income? Now, they're all going to say yes, right? They're all going to be like, yeah, I would be able to do that, except for like a few of them. They're like, no, I don't work weekends, right? And then I'll say, well, how have you done that in the past? Give me an example of a time that you've been able to do that in the past, or a time where you worked overtime to hit your income goals. And if they're not able to give me that, or I can tell that they're kind of dancing around the question, they're not going to have good work ethic. Okay. I also want to see adaptability to change, unless they're an acquisitions manager in the past. I'm okay with that. But if they move from like software to solar to, selling in-home services, I want to know what that transition period looked like. And I want to know how they actually got there and how they were able to ramp up. And I'll give you a really good example. I was hiring a rep and I ended up hiring this guy and he was a top performing solar rep. And I told him, look, you don't know anything about real estate. I don't see how you could find success in this industry. And his answer was pretty good. He said, well, I didn't know anything about solar when I got into solar. And I was terrible at the beginning. But I looked at what the top guy did and I just followed that exactly. I did twice the amount of effort and I became a top performing solar rep in 3 months. And so I'm looking for some sort of adaptability to change. And then I'm also looking for competitiveness. And so I want people to be the top performing rep. I do not want them to just settle for, second place, third place. And so I might ask them, what is the other guy doing that you're not doing? How are you trying to beat him right now? And I want to know like actual tangible things that they're trying to do to become the top rep inside of their organization. If they are not trying to become the top rep inside their organization, I don't want them inside of mine. And so the outcome here is that they pass through your initial screening. I am going to then ask them for references. And so when I ask them, hey, you said you were the top performer, who can I call to verify that? Because I will call them. And they need to give me their boss's name and phone number. And then I'm going to say, are they going to back up exactly what you just said? Or should I be aware of anything just before I call? Some of the reps that lied, they might say, well, you probably shouldn't call this guy because we had a bad fallout or whatever. Like, that's typically bullshit. I want to get a good recommendation. And all of the reps that I've hired, when they give me a reference, they want me to call them. They want me to call the reference because that person backs them up. Like, it actually helps them. It's like, if you have a good business, you want them to go look at your testimonials. You're not trying to hide anything there because you know that the testimonials speak for themselves. And so what I do is I get those references, I get my script. So I have an entire script that I send them. And I send them a video of me role playing the script. So it's a pretty like by the process, by the book call recording of me following this process. So that way it's not like me hitting them with a bunch of reframes and craziness. I follow the script because I want them to follow the script. I want them to follow the process. And then here I call the damn references. References do you no good unless you call them. And let me tell you, when I made this mistake, I actually did call the reference, but I hired somebody against my better judgment and it blew up on me. And so I had this guy, another solar rep, well-trained in NEPQ. Like, this dude had gone through Cardone's training. He had gone through Sandler. He'd gone through like a bunch of different sales training, had a really good sales process. I really liked him on the call. And then I got his references and I called one of them. And the guy was very, very ambiguous with his answers. He's like, oh, yeah, he kind of worked here. I was like, okay, well, what happened? He's like, I don't know. He just didn't really work out. He was being very, very vague. He didn't want to talk too bad about the guy, but he was not talking talking good about him at all. Like barely had anything to say. I talked to another reference who said good things, but that bad reference, I should have known better. I hired the guy and I ended up firing him within a week. Like it was that simple because this guy was terrible. And I would have picked that up if I would have actually listened to the reference. And so you need to make sure you call the references. From there, I do a role play. So I sent them my script and I sent them a video of me role playing so they can hear what it sounds like. And the purpose of this interview is I want to know, one, did they show up prepared? So did they actually study the script? Did they study the process? Did they watch the call? Did they prepare for the call? Do they use tonality naturally in their sales conversation? This is another big one. And so I've seen reps and I've hired bad reps where they just sound like a robot. They have no inflection in their voice. They use no tonality in their conversation. And I thought I could train it. And yes, you can train it. It's just going to take a lot longer. And so I'm looking for someone that will lean in, use good tonality. I also want to make sure that they are actively listening. So when I role play, I'll say something like, yeah, I'm going through a divorce. And I want to see how they respond. Do they say, oh gosh, that could be really tough. Like, how are you doing? If they're actively listening, that's a good sign. If they say, okay, gotcha, you're going through a divorce and do you live in the house now? And they just go right to the script. I know that they aren't going to be listening on their sales conversations. They're just going to be trying to read the script. I also want to see, do they show empathy? So just like in that example, man, that could be really tough. How are you doing? Right? Instead of like, okay, got it. Going through a divorce. Got it. Good acquisitions managers are very empathetic. So I want to make sure they're showing empathy on their sales calls. I also want to make sure they follow the framework. It doesn't need to be to a T. So I put generally right here. Do they follow the framework? Are they able to, go through the connection phase, the situation phase, problem awareness? Like, can they at least follow the framework generally? I don't care if they go off of a little bit because I haven't coached them yet, but are they following the framework? Or are they just like completely winging it? And I'll give you a good example. I had one guy who was a prior acquisitions manager. He got on the call and he thought he would be a hot shot and just do his own sales process. So he went through time frame, condition, motivation, and then asking price. And I was like, that was not the process at all. That's exactly what everyone else is doing. And if you do that here, you're never going to find success. So I just, pushed him off. I did not end up hiring that guy. And then lastly, I want to find out, are they coachable? So I'll give you an example from one of my top reps. He actually struggled a little bit with the empathy part when he came on. He was somewhat empathetic, but didn't go as deep as he should have. And so I just role played with him. Like, okay, role play with me. So I'm going through a divorce. I've been, fighting with my wife and it's starting to have an impact on my kid. Now, he kind of skipped through that, but I was like, it's having an impact on your kid. In what way, though? Started going empathetic in my tonality, started going deeper with the seller. And I said, okay, now you do it. And then he did it phenomenally. And this guy ended up closing, I think his biggest month was like $240,000 that he closed alone because he was able to learn the process and he was very coachable. Okay, so that's the last thing that I'm looking at is, are they coachable? I'm going to give them coaching feedback and I want to role play back with me. Now, the outcome of this, if they did well in the role play, then I set up a final interview. If there was potential for them to improve on the role play, I may give them some homework. I'll say, hey, go watch this video and then come back. We're going to role play again on the final interview. Right? So I may give them homework. If everything went well, I'll still give them some sort of homework. So I'll say, hey, go look at our reviews or go look at some of my content online. Go look at this training. I want to know what your thoughts are on the next call. Okay. I do that before the final interview. Now, the final interview, I'm going to check to make sure they did their homework. And then I'm going to find out their income goals. I want to know, how much did you make at your last job? How much do you want to make here? Okay. Once I find that out, I want to make $16,000 a month. Why do you want to make $16,000 a month? Why not 20? Why not 10? Tell me why it's 16. And they might say, well, right now I'm making $8,000 and my mortgage is $4,000 a month. I really don't have anything left over to like spend on my family after all of my bills. Okay, well, what would you spend if you did make $16,000 a month? I'm going to go deep. I want to get them to the point to where they're giving me exactly what they want once they start making that money. And I'm going to explain why. And before I do that, I'll tell you a story. I hired one rep when he was a young kid and he was like, yeah, I want to be able to make $12,000 a month. Okay, well, why? Well, I really want to buy my dream truck. What truck is that? I was like a Ram TRX or something like that. And so I asked him like exactly what color, like what he's going to do. Who's the first person he's going to call once he gets that? I want to get really clear on what exactly he wants. The same way we do this with sellers. And then what I'm going to do is like for his example, I printed it out and sent it to him. Hey, put this on your desk. Right? Like I want you to see that this is right in front of you and it's in reach. Now, for some people, it goes deeper, right? Man, I really want to be able to afford to take my family on vacation, right? Where would you go? Okay, when do you want to be able to do that? All of these things are helping me hold them accountable to what they want. So when I'm going over their KPIs, I'm not saying, hey, these are the KPIs you need to hit for me to make money so I can go buy, my Lamborghini and take my family on vacation. No, this is for you. These are the KPIs that you need to hit so you can take your family on that vacation, so you could buy that, Ram TRX truck, whatever truck you want to buy, right? This is for the reps, not for you. And so I need to get really clear on that when I go into the deeper why. From there, I find out their career path. Okay, so let's say you do that. Like in 5 years, where would you like to be? Do you still want to be closing? Do you want to be a sales manager? What does that look like? And so once I get really clear on that, I will start building out a career path to actually help them get there. So one of my guys wanted to be a team lead. I said, all right, well, here's the deal. I want you to bring in a minimum of $120,000 a month for 6 months. After you do that, then I will allow you to bring someone onto your team and you're going to train them. And so he did. So we started hiring after the 6 months, like he hit those goals. And so we started bringing somebody on underneath him so he could start training them and he could be that team lead, because ultimately what he wanted was eventually to just be in a sales manager seat and start actually coaching people and helping people. He got a lot of fulfillment out of that, where he didn't get as much fulfillment out of closing deals, but he was 100% okay proving himself first. Okay, so that was his career path, and that's what we set up for him. From there, I go over their income goals. Now, I save this sheet specifically for my inner circle members, and so I build this out for each one of them. I need to know what their pickup rates are, their conversions to appointments, offers, contracts, all that good stuff. And so I build this out for them. So let's say my, pickup rate 7.5%. I'm going to have, out of all my conversations, 30% are going to book into appointments. I'll be able to make offers on 85%. I'll build this out. I'll say, okay, so what do you want to make month one? Meaning like after 30 days of being with the company. Let's say they say, I want to make, $8,000. Okay, well, your average commission is going to be $4,000 on an average deal size of 40 grand. So you're going to need to make 161 dials. You're going to need to have 12 conversations, 4 appointments, and make 3 offers per day at the beginning, because your close rate is going to be garbage. It's going to be like 5%, right? We're going to get that better. And then I'm going to build out a plan to get them to this 25% close rate. And so once they give me their number of what they want to make, then I build it out to say, okay, well, this is what you need to be able to do. This is the output that you need to do to hit that number. Okay, so I will go over that with them, and then I will challenge them on that. So once I have that, I'm going to pull up the Miro board here again. So once I have what they want to make, why they want to make it, I break out the KPIs, then I test their accountability. So I'll say, look, there are going to be days where you don't hit these metrics. How would you like me to help you ensure that you are hitting these metrics consistently, so that way you can start taking those vacations with your family? And they're going to tell me how they want to be held accountable. And it's their idea, not mine. Because if I just call them every day and yell at them whenever they don't hit their KPIs, they're probably not going to last very long inside the organization. And so I need to hold them accountable to hitting their metrics. And then once I do that, I challenge their commitment. Now, I've gone really hard on challenging people. So I'll give you an example. There have been reps where, I felt pretty confident about hiring them, but I wanted to challenge them even more. And I said, look, you seem like you're a great guy, but so far, like based on what you're telling me, I'm not 100% convinced that you would be able to find the success that you want here. And then they're going to ask me, well, why do you feel like that? Well, and they might say why. They might, just shut down. If they say, well, why do you feel like that? Well, you only have experience in XYZ, and this is an entire different industry. I mean, you tell me, how would you make sure that you hit these metrics to find this level of success? And I want them to sell themselves to me, right? This is the last part where I give them kind of an objection, right? I might even give an objection. Look, you seem great. I have to go talk to my partner. I mean, why do you feel like you would be a good fit for the team? I need to explain to him, like, why you feel like you'd be a good fit. Like, I have to talk to him. How would you sell him on it? There's a million different ways that you can challenge a sales rep, but I want to give them some sort of pushback. And I want to see how they overcome that sort of objection. Okay. And so once I go through all of that, I challenge them. If I feel like they made it through all of that, then I walk them through onboarding, all of the agreements that we need to get signed, and then the next steps. And so that proven process, a lot of that comes from a book called Sales Boss. And if you haven't read that, I highly recommend you guys go check out Sales Boss. A lot of it comes from that. That process is what I've seen consistently produce high quality reps. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So hopefully this helps. If you guys want to watch the video on the mindset of top performing reps, I'm going to drop that in the description because that's huge as well. It talks a lot about how to actually make sure that your reps, once you hire them, are the right person. And so hopefully this helps, guys. I will see you guys on the next video.